What is up, everybody? It's me, the War Boss, and today we are just having a nice little just chatting stream where I'm going to talk to you guys, and I'm going to kind of just build my D&D world, and we'll just talk and hang out for a couple of hours. Now, I've talked about my D&D world actually quite frequently in my streams, and even on my channel on YouTube, I've done it. Also, tell me what you think about the new office setup. I just kind of fixed it up everywhere. Made it look a little bit nicer, a little bit more presentable for stream. Either way, I'm going to pretty much just hang out here, and I'm going to talk to anybody who pops into chat for a couple of hours. I'm not really going to be playing anything because this is kind of one of my off days. But, I am planning on recording later on today. Just for a couple of the ongoing series I have over on YouTube. Then, of course, tomorrow we're going to be doing, Shadow of War again as we get prepared for the normal Uruk tournament that will be happening this Thursday. Now, a little bit of backstory to the D&D world that I have built. And kind of just how I figured I was going to build it. Now, I used to play D&D when I was way, way younger. I actually learned from my Uncle David, who really got me into the game. He also got me into Magic the Gathering, and I took that way too seriously. I actually used to go to tournaments and things like that for Magic the Gathering, and I had won money quite a few times while I was doing it. But he really kind of is the one who introduced me to just this world of, I don't want to call it nerdiness because it's not nerdiness, it's geekiness, you know? And he really kind of, if anybody helped kind of bring out the creative side of me, it was him of all people, which is funny because I barely talk to him anymore. Now, I was always kind of a geek as I grew up. I played Magic, I played D&D, and I actually learned how to DM from a very, very young age. I've built lots and lots of worlds, but as, people get older, the people that you used to play with, they don't really hang out that much anymore. Or we all just, have our own busy lives and things like that. I kind of had to adapt my style of DMing so that way people could still play and enjoy it, but not feel like they had to be committed to it. And so I kind of switched over to a DMing style which was drop in and drop out. Now, I'm sure you're wondering how it is I could do something like that, as most D&D stories, they're one singular continuous story with one group of adventurers. Well, I kind of figured that as great as that is, it is just impossible to reliably have people come and, show up every week or actually schedule a time for everything. So, I ended up switching to not the story being the big draw, but the world. And the world that I build for kind of my adult friends and for these drop-in, drop-out campaigns are massive, sprawling worlds where every single thing that each smaller party does affects the world as a whole. Now, this gave me a little bit of freedom in terms of what I could do. I didn't have to plan for, super long ahead of time, campaigns. It allowed me to make shorter, more specific campaigns for certain levels, as some people were maybe level 1, level 2, some people were level 3, level 4, and it did cause a little bit of problems at first on balancing encounters, because it's really hard to make an encounter that's fun for a level 4 character, but not gonna kill a level 1 character. Especially when you're playing the monsters and building the dungeons as if they were organic. So what I ended up doing is I kind of made a rank system in my worlds. Now, my first big, expansive campaign I actually used to do over on Roll20, and was called Adventures in Erisgend, I believe. And that was actually pretty successful for a while. So pretty much what I do for these big, big, big campaigns is I end up, I usually will focus it around one major city or continent. Then I'll build smaller towns and things like that that are kind of scattered around everywhere else. Now this does mean that it gives me a lot more flexibility in what I can do in terms of, like, what I can do. And I also, with the magnitude of the campaign, instead of it just being focused in, like, one town or city, it gives them a whole grand scope of things. And it really helps with, like, awarding big awards, for example. You know, in D&D, you can obtain boats, you can obtain castles, you can obtain the deeds to towns, you know, and these are all things that are kind of limited when you're only focused in one little tiny area in a massive sprawling world. So by making the world focused in one city, but filling out an entire continent, it gives everybody a chance to, you know, go and do something, or, you know, you got ownership of this town, and now you've got all that going on, or you want to go and adventure across the seas. And, of course, with adventuring across the seas and things like that, everything that these players do, they actually have a serious impact in what they do and what they don't do. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what I mean by that. It's a little hard to explain, but pretty much I will make, because I'll generally have quite a few parties running at the exact same time, I'll usually end up having, like, 2 to 5 different campaigns all built per level, which is actually really fun for me. It just is really fucking time consuming, because if anybody has actually DM'd in terms of D&D, you know how much time and effort goes into even building one dungeon. So, as much as I love to build these huge, sprawling, crazy dungeons, it was just not a possibility in terms of the long-term viability of certain campaigns. So what I ended up doing is I would make usually 5 short, like, introductions to different dungeons. Then depending on which one that these players ended up, you know, accepting, that's the campaign that I would focus on. And none of these, as I said, are big, long, sprawling dungeons. These aren't dungeons that are going to take you from level 1 to 8. These are dungeons that will take you from 1 to, like, 3, 4 if you're an experience hog. Now, this does mean shorter, you know, campaigns and things like that, but it also means that it gives the players the ability to drop in and drop out as necessary. The reason I do this is, as I said, a lot of my friends that I play with, almost everybody I play with nowadays, except for my little brother, they're all adults. We all have our own lives. I work a full-time job on top of doing all of this stuff on the side. My girlfriend, she works a full-time job. My best friend, Brent, he works a full-time job, and so does his girlfriend. Alex, which is her brother, lives down in Hudson. Some of my friends have moved to Texas, and they can only, you know, talk on video call and things like that. So, by making these shorter dungeons, I can usually get 1 to 3 sessions out of somebody until something comes up. So by making dungeons that can usually be completed, they're shorter dungeons, much more, and, like, pretty straightforward ones. Now, don't get me wrong, if I get a core group of, like, really good, solid players, then I end up doing another, you know, long-term dungeon that I want them to focus on. But another thing you learn as a DM is it's just impossible to guess what the players are going to do, what they're going to decide to do. And that really hurts when you go and try to do these big long-term campaigns. Because you could have things planned out for the next 5 sessions, and then they decide not to follow the quest-giving NPC, which is the main introduction to this long-ass dungeon, you know? And that's not even including stuff that happens in the actual dungeon itself. I mean, God forbid one of my players die in the middle of a dungeon. Now, the next 3 sessions that I planned for 4 people, I need to go back and completely edit to try and, you know, get it to work. It's just a lot more, you know, viable for me to do these shorter campaigns, but more of them. Because it also means that somebody doesn't have to commit to, you know, an 8-session campaign. 1 to 3 usually isn't that hard. I try to aim for 3 sessions when I do these shorter dungeons, because 1 is just a one-off, and I really don't like people building characters for a one-off campaign. 2 is a maybe. I like to throw in like a couple of mini bosses, and of course the BBEG at the end of each major dungeon. But it also allows me to be more flexible with parties, you know? Actually, you know what? Let me pull up. There we go. Let me make my face bigger since we're just talking today. Oh, I'm pretty sure I just blocked off the... Yeah, I did. Oh well. But, as I was saying, that's pretty much the way that I tend to do these kinds of things when I'm building these worlds. And this particular world is Now, I've always been a fan of Menzoberranzan, Underdark, that kind of stuff from, like, 2nd to, I think, maybe 3.5 edition. And I've always preferred the older editions of D&D anyway. Just because, you know, I think they're better. I honestly do. 5th edition is so heavily weighted in the favor of the players that it's not even really fun to be a DM because you can't make actually, like, challenging dungeons because the players are so fucking powerful. And every time they give you a new reference book or something as a player, they even get stronger. So even the stuff that worked before doesn't even work anymore, you know? So, with this world, I've built it kind of as a hybrid. Now, what I mean by this is I'm using 3.5 as the core rules and build of the characters. So far, it's been a pretty fair challenge. You can't do anything with people making bad decisions. You just can't plan for that. For example, I had a party just recently go in one of those mini dungeons I was talking about, and I warned them. I warned them wholeheartedly not to go and fight Bristleback. Bristleback was a mini-boss that I had put in an old farmstead, which was this huge boar with these parasitic vines that had implanted itself into its brain and caused it to go feral, and, you know, it's a boar, so it eats meat. But, they went in after this fucking mini-boss. Now, this mini-boss was built to be a level 2 to 3 challenge. So that means every party member should have been level 2, maybe one level 1. They went and they decided to go and take this thing on with 2 of their party members at level 1, 1 of their party members at level 2, and then they had another guy that was, like, right on the border of level 3, but that didn't really matter, because if you're level 2, you're level 2. That's just how it is, you know? So they went, and I warned them, I even had the NPC warn them, that it was a really, really bad idea to go and take this boar on. I had built it to be, like, a challenging fight, because if they had succeeded and returned the deed, then, because there was a deed in the town that the, Emir was trying to get so that way he could have ownership of the town again, because there was a whole diplomatic thing that was going on in the world. But pretty much what had happened is they got the deed, they actually went to the mayor's manor, got the deed, had it in their hand, and they should have went and done the rest of the stuff. The NPC told them what they were, well, not what they were supposed to do, but kind of guided them where they were supposed to do. They're like, nah, let's go take on the mini-boss, we can handle it, right? They couldn't handle it at all. I had a druid that had a horse, and honestly, the horse freaking carried the whole team. And it literally was the last, I think, party member standing was this freaking horse. But about 4 battle rounds in, 3 of their people were down. 1 person couldn't get over their fear, you know, and they were just pretty much immobilized, and Bristleback just tore right through all of them. And if they had waited until I had actually, like, they had reached the level that I had expected them to be at when they went and took this thing on, they would have won. They actually almost won as they were. It's just, they didn't have the damage output to health ratio that they needed to actually be able to beat this mini-boss. So, unfortunately, the whole team got wiped. It was a TPK. I did my best to ensure that they didn't die, but as a DM, you can't really hold their hands, I guess. They learned. Hopefully they're not going to go charge into whatever next mini-boss they have in one of my short dungeons, completely unprepared, but either way. Main part of this story is these short kind of campaigns, or I don't want to call them campaigns. These short dungeons that I built for this major campaign all have results. They died against Bristleback. Since I'm using 3.5 edition rules, he actually levels up off of that. And now, whatever next party goes to that dungeon, it's no longer a level 1 dungeon area anymore. Because the mini-boss is now, like, the major boss. So now I have to completely change pretty much the entire, like, encounter table. Which is fine, because honestly, higher levels I prefer anyway. It's really hard to make these really low-level dungeons as a DM. Especially using, like, older editions. 3.5. 4th edition I really liked because it was, like, very MMO-like and very balanced in terms of, like, XP gain and stuff like that. But 4th edition was freaking brutal for these characters, man. Like, player characters were in rough shape when they went into each fight. And they actually need to, like, use their skills and think about it. You can't just walk in, bam, 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 bong something with a club 3 times and it'd be dead like you can in 5th edition. Now, I have messed around with the idea of an AD&D and 2nd edition campaign. I just don't know enough about that edition to actually build an entire world surrounding it, you know? And as much as I want to, because I've got some really cool modules from 2nd edition. I think I have Sunless Citadel, which introduced the Gulthias tree. Got Menzo Baron Zan, which is really cool. Cities of Splendor. These are all pre-built modules. But I've never really been a big fan of running just plain Jane modules. I just find them really kind of straightforward. And, you know, the old bloods, the people who have played the game before and have, you know, seen these dungeons before, they already know what to expect. Which is really cool for them, but it's not great for me. I've always liked the writing part of DMing myself, as hard as it can be to write a balanced campaign for other people. But either way, pretty much what I'm saying is, in this world, I will generally do I'll usually do 2 to 5 smaller dungeons and give each party the chance to decide what they want to do. And as they choose quests and don't choose quests, it affects the world. For example, in Erisgend, one of my previous campaigns, there was a ogre, I think he was an ogre, 90% sure he was an ogre. But pretty much he just, you know, started off as a standard ogre. Nothing special. They didn't want to go after the quest. They left it alone. Point of that campaign was this ogre was growing a small war band and was going to start staging raids all over the area. And they needed somebody to interfere with it. Now, because they did not choose that quest, what happened is this ogre leveled up. Now, and I don't mean just traditionally leveled up. I mean, like, story-driven leveled up. He succeeded in gathering his warband. At first, it was only small, you know. It was a couple goblins, some bugbears, you know, standard goblinoid stuff that might follow a big, dumb brute. They didn't choose the quest again after he had started doing these raids. So I'm sitting there, like, okay. I'm telling you that this is becoming a threat, but you're ignoring it, which is, you know, totally fine. I mean, it's the player's choice to figure out what they want to go and do. So, he's now gone from a campaign level 2 to a campaign level 3. Campaign level 3, he's starting to attract some serious followers. I'm talking about, like, orcs, more bugbears. Goblins are now more of a, like, you know, labor force and things like that for the more intelligent races, more brutal races. Another thing is, they started training beasts. I do remember this. So, they raided a town, and the ogre warlord, can't think of his name off the top of my head. I'm sure if I go through my old notes, it'll just pop right back into my head. But pretty much, they raided this town in the kingdom, and instead of just burning it down, they actually decided to occupy it. So now they have a base of operations. They started taming, basic beasts. I'm talking like wolves, dire wolves, kind of the basic goblinoid, like, beasts of war that you would see. Wargs, big-ass boars, because, orcs and boars, they kind of, they work together. But, I remember I actually had to build a pretty significant, dungeon for that, because they had ignored it so many times that he was actually, starting to slowly become a power. As I said, he started getting, orcs, more intelligent species. Drow started trading with him. Bandits started working with him and getting a share of the loot. But it was a really crazy, campaign. And it was the last one I did before my previous group dissolved. They were doing fairly well in it, too, if I recall correctly. But, yeah, they ended up getting... The campaign ended up ending without any real conclusion. That's because everybody kind of started moving away and you couldn't really do anything. Now, for this campaign, I'm intending to do something similar. Whatever quests they do pick, they get to go and resolve. Whatever quests they don't pick, however, will be offered up for the other groups to decide what I want to do, or for a random adventuring group to partake in. Now, the whole random adventuring group thing is pretty much, I'll roll a percentile die. Depending on whatever the percentile is, it's either massive failure, no substantial change, good result, or very good result. So what that means is, say, I don't want to give too much information to my campaigns quite yet, but might as well. There's a cult. Now, this cult is technically under the guise of a legitimate religion called the Religion of Our Burned Mother. I believe that's what it's called. Well, let me check my notes. Yeah. The Followers of the Burnt Mother, I believe it is. Now, I've already got their storyline pretty well built and, in my head. And I don't mind revealing a little bit of it, but there's still some more stuff I want to expand on. But pretty much, this religion was, at one point, a legitimate religion, accepted in the general area. They did normal churchy stuff, like charities and things like that. And then, all of a sudden, they kind of had a divide. I'm not going to explain why they had a divide, but they ended up having a divide. And half of the religion disappeared. Just gone. And they ended up becoming the cult of the Burnt Mother. Now, pretty much some background of this is they were the fanatics, and, they took the tome way too seriously. They're kind of I want to call them, Christian crusaders, because they are not by any means. They're way more sick and twisted, although there's some really twisted shit that the Christian and Catholics did in the past, but I'm talking, outwards torture, kidnapping, not really, I guess kind of extortion, but not too much. But they target a specific, population because of some writings in their book. Now, this cult, which was once a legitimate, religion, as they became more fanatical, they became more destructive. And what that means is they've kind of went from being a martyrdom, like a saints and things like that, to, like, trying to create their own martyrs and force this martyrdom on this specific section of the population. I'm not going to explain what it is in the long term, just because I do intend to actually, like, record these sessions with these different groups, and I want you guys to understand what's going to happen as it happens. You know, I don't want to give too much background so you guys are watching and you're like, oh my god, he told us about this. I want to leave most of it as a surprise. But pretty much, they slowly slipped from what was once a legitimate religion to kind of... How do I explain it without revealing too much? To an elemental chaotic cult. That's the best way I can explain it. Now, there's all sorts of fucked up shit messed up in the actual religion itself, and the story unfolds pretty well. I've got it pretty well written from when people are first introduced to this cult to how they are in the, like, society. Because they, as I said, at surface level, they are still a legitimate religion. Like, they'll have churches in towns, you know? But it's all kind of just a cover for what they actually are, what they've actually become. Now, because they've kind of slipped more towards this elemental chaos, I might as well say, they've slipped more towards this elemental chaos fire, or fire elemental chaos kind of cult. They have access to, you know, familiars that are from the elemental plane of fire. I'm talking nothing that big, because the first campaign, you know, is from level 1 to 3. And it's got some human fights in there, a couple of familiar fights, but it's really just meant to be an introduction to this big bad cult that's growing. And growing right under people's noses, which is really interesting. I'm really excited to do that campaign. But, for example, if nobody chooses to do this cult now gains more leverage. They gain a better ground, you know. Not only do they summon these stronger familiars, because they weren't dealt with when they were still small, but now they've kind of implanted themselves into society itself, which is really cool. But that's kind of how I want to do, like, campaign level ups. And, for example, if I roll a percentile die and they get super low on the percentile, it's probably going to be a 20% per result, so below 20 is a really, really bad result. A 20 to 40 or 21 to 40 is probably going to be just fail. You lose. GG's, I guess. 40 to 60 will be no change, which pretty much means, yeah, they went and they dealt with some of the problem, but they didn't destroy the core of it, so it still exists. The growth isn't stopped, but it is stunted, so it'll kind of be at the same level, which means I won't build on that campaign anymore until either there's a failed result and they go up, a successful result where they're wiped out, or a party actually goes and accepts this mission. So, if there's a no change result on like a level 1 dungeon, I'll just keep it as a level 1 dungeon. It means I can focus my attention on harder dungeons with more interesting creatures. Because really, level 1 to level 3 is so fucking difficult to build, man. Especially to make so many of them, because if you think about it, what do you really have as options from challenge rating 0 to challenge rating 3? That isn't going to completely wipe out the party the moment they encounter it. You got goblins, you know, bandits, the cult thing that I'm doing, that's just one of them. Wild beasts, there's just really not a lot of options for really low challenge rating stuff to still make it like a fulfilling campaign. And it's really hard to build multiple short dungeons with these creatures without making them feel the same. So, in order to kind of circumnavigate that, I've started building my own monsters to put in these dungeons. What that means is pretty much I'll build a complete stat list, the random creature, completely from scratch, using the books as reference to kind of balance these things out as I can. So that way I get more flexibility with what I can, like, actually do. Because I don't want 3 parties fighting goblins at the same time, you know? I don't want to write 3 goblins. I don't want to try to write 3 different dungeons that all, you know, have a regard to these different, the same species. I mean, seriously, what can you do with that? We'll do goblins as an example. Your options for goblins are goblins are raiding, goblin barrows, goblins in a ruin, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much the big 3. Goblin cult, maybe. I think they have their own god. It's a really weirdly named one. It's like Burglethurgs or something like that. But to make these dungeons memorable, so that way the players actually enjoy them, you know? I don't want it to just feel like a crawl, you know? I want it to feel like a grindy crawl through different types of dungeons. The whole point is to, you know, make them be memorable and make them actually, like, feel involved in the game. And it's really hard to do when you're trying to make multiple dungeons for the same kind of species. Now, with that being said, there is some stuff you can do with if you're creative enough and flexible enough. For example, another one that I have is a classic sewer crawl. Now, this sewer crawl, long story short of this dungeon, is there's a creature that's coming up from the sewers and it's dragging people into the sewers and they're not seen again. I won't say exactly what it is that's actually doing it, but while they're in the sewers, of course you're going to deal with your normal vermin, but you're also going to deal with, like, vagrants and just, like, normal wild beasts. The actual danger of being in this really kind of gross, overused sewer. It's partially like a labyrinth, which I think is really going to be a fun kind of motif to do. Especially since I don't tend to do a lot of labyrinth dungeons. Just because a dungeon where it's mostly walking is not that interesting to me. I like traps, I like creatures, I like ambushes, I like, you know, doing that kind of stuff. And a labyrinth just, I feel like it takes away from it because there's only one successful path, and half the time people are just going to be walking around in circles. Especially, I mean, even if you write them a map, they still won't really be competent. I can't say competent. They'll get confused, and what should have, a dungeon that could have been a 3-session dungeon all of a sudden becomes an 8-session dungeon because they're walking down the same corridors, and then you're rolling on random encounter tables, which kind of takes away the immersion because it's just random creatures that you're throwing at these guys. And it's even worse is if they're battling these random encounter table creatures and all of a sudden they're like, oh, there's still creatures here. We should be going the right way. And then all of a sudden they're walking in circles, battling random encounter table creatures, which, I mean, is if it was an MMO, it's a great way to grind XP, I guess. But it's not my kind of dungeon build. Like, I'll throw one in normally as a section of a dungeon, not the full dungeon. Because there are some really cool things you can do in a labyrinth, but if you do it too much, it kind of ruins the dungeon. What I mean by that is, you know, classic Minotaur in the labyrinth, for example. You can have something that burrows through walls to attack people. You could have things with, like, stone camouflage that'll just randomly jump out and they'll use it as prey. But then you've also got to take into account when you're building these worlds, these dungeons need to feel organic. Like, they need to feel like there's a reason behind it. There would be no point in creatures building a den in a labyrinth if there's no consistent food in it, which makes it really complicated to build something like a labyrinth, because there's only like certain situations where it would really fit in, where you could have a fully flourishing ecosystem and have it make sense. The first ones that come to mind for me are, as I said, a sewer, or maybe it's an execution maze that like some evil dude, or maybe even the king, you know? Maybe even the king has this maze or labyrinth built as a way to execute people. And that would make sense, that there would be this whole ecosystem building in it, because there would be a consistent flow of food for creatures to actually want to like set up shop there, so that way they can try to hunt. It doesn't make sense that there would be an organic ecosystem in some dusty, musty-ass fucking ruins in the very high top of the mountain, where there's nothing that consistently goes there, because you need to break a seal that needs like 3 different fucking gems or something, you know? It doesn't make sense. A minotaur couldn't organically live in that spot. And then that gives you limitations about what you could actually do in that dungeon, you know? I'm gonna take a drink real quick. Ugh. Sorry, I was yelling a lot at work yesterday. Very long day. But in these dusty, musty old ruins, what are your options? Think about it. If you need to get through a very specific puzzle that only people who've like searched around for certain things have got, what's gonna be in that dungeon? You've got an option of undead, because they don't need food, they don't need water, they don't need anything to live. You've got constructs, you've got traps. Maybe further down in the dungeon, because it's not going to be in the entry hall. Unless there is a, like, wall broken in somewhere in the dungeon that leads to, like, a cave system, which then you can start building a organic ecosystem, but then you need to turn that ruin, not from this ruin that needs a whole bunch of puzzle stuff, but you turn it into a lair. So kind of a sealed off place where, you know, maybe an intelligent species like hobgoblins or Durger, that's what they're called, the dark dwarves live. But you need to now turn it into an organic system. And it could be a cool surprise the first time, second time maybe, third time maybe. These are all, but you can't reuse that template too many times, because really the only intelligent species that would do that were, as I said, things like goblins, Durger, orcs maybe. Drow aren't going to use something that isn't their own craftsmanship. All the different, like, vermin creatures. Undead, I guess, you could use. Kobolds. Kobolds could be fun, but kobolds are always surrounding, like, you know, dragons. That's their whole spiel. That's, like, their thing. They're, like, these crazy fanatics, like, dragon fanatics. So that's generally where they are. And now, if you've got kobolds, you've got to start thinking, okay, what can I use as a boss monster that makes sense with kobolds? Because you really only get a few options there. A wyvern for low level, I guess. You could do you probably will end up doing a dragon of some sort, just because they're kobolds and that's their thing. Or some other dragon-esque creature, I guess. And then, of course, you can throw in mind flayers later on, because they just take control of whatever. But mind flayers are so far down under the mountain with the friggin' master brains and things like that, it wouldn't make sense for them to be in a ruin close to the top of a mountain, close to the surface. That's not where they would hang out. Now, in this campaign, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of insight into what I'm doing, and we're just going to start going through the Dungeon Master's Guide, monster manuals, that kind of thing. And you guys are going to kind of see how I start building these dungeons. Now, I am not a perfect DM by any means. I've got my own flaws, but I have had pretty good success with the campaigns I've run. I ran Adventure League for a while, which is kind of boring after a while because, as I said, I'm not a module person, and pretty much in Adventurers League, you're stuck using modules. But I've got quite a few dungeons that need some work to be done today, which is why I'm even having this stream in the first place. That's because I didn't really feel like playing anything, if I can be honest. I mean, I've got a lot of recording that I need to do today, so I just wanted to do a really quick, short stream, see if anybody wanted to hang out and talk and, you know, do that. That way I can do my thing and still talk to chat and all that. But, you guys are going to generally see how I start these dungeons off. As the dungeons I will be building today are going to be level 1 to 3 dungeons. I've already made quite a few, but there's still a few more that I need to, well, build, pretty much. Oh, and just so you know, this VOD will not exist, just because I don't want my players to actually go on and get an idea of what's going on, you know? I don't want them to see it. So this is going to be, this series here is going to probably be a either you're here or you're not here kind of series, because I don't want my players to get, you know, a heads up on what's actually going to happen to them or get insight into the dungeon, because if I'm here building the dungeons talking with you guys, they could literally just click on the Twitch and they could be like, okay, what's he got going on? Huh? Oh, so that's what we're fighting in that room, huh? And I don't want that. So, either they're here, or they're not. If they're here, then good. They get some insight into the dungeons that I'm going to be building. But if they're not here, then sucks for them, because these VODs aren't going to exist. I'm not going to post them anymore, and I'm certainly not going to keep them on Twitch for any longer than I think the 5 days that they're allowed to be on Twitch. Which is a whole other thing, but I'm not going to get into that. But pretty much, the dungeons I'm going to be focusing on today, these are ones that I have not actually truly built yet, or ones that I'm expanding on for possibilities. I've got, the one that had Bristleback was the Ghost Village of Remus. Now, the Ghost Village of Remus, that is the complete dungeon. I don't need to do anything with that right now until somebody decides to go there, and then I'll have to rebuild the whole dungeon because it's now a level 3 dungeon and no longer a level 1 dungeon. But the ones I'm going to be doing today are Stone Blister Cove and potentially the Sewers of Domrai. Now, Domrai is the main city that this world kind of circles around, and is what it's built around. And it's run by an Emir, I think his name is Emir Salzar, or Salzab, something like that. But he's the guy who's in charge of this main city, and he's pretty much the main quest giver for the game, unless I get a solid party and I can start expanding off of that. But pretty much it's going to be built around this kind of mercenary / adventuring league kind of build, in order to give my players the ability to drop in and drop out when they want. So, I have not done anything for these dungeons outside of writing the boss monsters and who they are. Now, the Sewers of Domrai, which is the sewers of the main city, I have two major, well, I have the main boss, and then I have a sub-boss. I'm not going to tell you what the main boss is, but I will tell you what the sub-boss is. So, in the Sewers of Domrai, the creature that is dragging these people off is named Filthjaw. I'll let you guys think about what could Filthjaw actually be, because I already know what it is. But the sub-boss of the sewers is named Shankmaster Lorg. And pretty much he's this, like, little goblin rogue dude who took over a section of the sewers and has a little, like, following of vagrants and things like that. And he'll come up to the surface and he'll mug people and retreat back into the sewers. And I'm calling him Shankmaster Lorg because he's going to be this, like, really lunatic little goblin type guy. But the potential enemies that I have for this, and I write these down sheerly kind of for my own reference, because I like, when I get this big burst of inspiration for these dungeons, I like to think about what could be in there that would be fair to the players. So the potential enemy types that I have in the Sewers of Dome Rai are naturally occurring vermin, low-level aberrations. Now, low-level aberrations are things like ethereal marauders and things like that. They're really kind of little irrelevant. I mean, they're not irrelevant. They can cause problems, but we're not talking about beholders here, you know? They're creatures that don't naturally exist in the world, but aren't crazy powerful. They're like, they accidentally phased into the world and are just kind of hiding and doing what they can in kind of guerrilla tactics. Natural plants. Now, this one is actually really freaking hard category to build out of. And this is because there is just no actual plant creatures. I've scoured the web for friggin' homebrew plant creatures. I've looked through books from 3.5, 4th edition, 5th edition. There are no plant monsters. I mean, I can probably count all of the low-level plant monsters on my two hands. And it's really like assassin vines and friggin' twig blights and that kind of stuff. Because, don't get me wrong, there are really cool plant monsters, but they're all like challenge rating 10. I'm talking about like friggin' guardian topiaries, these giant bramble balls, I can't think of what they were called. And this is using homebrew stuff. So, it's just a whole other thing. And then, of course, low-level humanoids. As I said before, we've got Shankmaster lore. We've got low-level humanoids who might follow Shankmaster lore. And it's going to be shit like vagrants and, you know, I don't know, bandits that live in the sewers, thieves, that kind of stuff. Pretty much the unwanted of the society. And that's pretty much the basis of Sewers of Dome Rai. Now, this dungeon does have 10 sub-locations. Now, by sub-locations, I mean rooms. But it's hard to explain. A sub-location, to me, is either things like a house or a room. They're just different parts of the dungeon that are connected by the different corridors. And I currently have 10 of those in this dungeon. Because in this dungeon, the sub-locations are cisterns. They're just kind of empty rooms and things like that. You know, that drain down under the mountain, which is under this big mountain is kind of the main focus of this entire campaign. Because bad shit is happening under the mountains. And there's all sorts of different ways you can actually get to under the mountain, but depending on what location you go through, depends on where you can actually go through the mountain to start with. There's all sorts of bad shit down there. But, that is Sewers of Dome Rai's kind of summary. Now, Stone Blister Cove is one I'm actually very interested in. And this one also has a major boss and a sub-boss. Now, if you people who are watching have ever played really, really old Yu-Gi-Oh!, the name of the sub-boss will kind of give you... Actually, I'm going to tell you what it is anyway. But you'll catch the reference if you ever played really, really old Yu-Gi-Oh! But the main boss of Stone Blister Cove is going to be the Beast of the Bay. And I'll let you guys think about that. What from level 1 to 3 could be considered a boss, but be called something like the Beast of the Bay? And then there's also a sub-boss, which is Hidodenchak. And he is a giant starfish. And I'm not talking about Patrick Starfish. I'm talking about, like, there's an old comic. I don't even think it's that old. I think it was made probably in the past couple of years. But pretty much, somebody made this horror comic focusing around Patrick Starfish that made him act like a actual, like, giant starfish. And that was kind of my basis for this boss. And I'm not talking about a human-sized starfish. I'm talking about, like, a starfish that massive starfish that could cover, like, a big chunk of a wall or something. Like, easily a huge-sized starfish. Now, This is going to be a difficult boss to balance. Because those of you who have, education in terms of marine biology know that starfish actually, they regenerate. And they split into multiple versions of themselves when a limb is chopped off. So, I'm going to have a really hard time balancing this particular boss because of its natural abilities. But I think I'm going to use the rules of trolls, where acid and fire, or hydras, acid and fire can kind of prevent the regenerative effect. And it's not going to be like an instantaneous regeneration. It's not going to be gaining, 10 hit points at the start of every turn. It's if they die, Hadouken Chak is going to pretty much heal, and there's going to be a second one or 3 more, depending on how many limbs were chopped off. Which makes me wonder how I'm going to balance the encounter in terms of damage types. I'm thinking slashing types. They'll do standard damage, but will cause this regenerative effect. Bludgeoning should be fine, because you're just pounding it into the dirt. And piercing it should also be pretty fine. And of course magic will be fine. But I think slashing is going to be the big one. Now, that being said, Stone Blister Cove is going to be an interesting mixture of, pirates, or pirate-esque, characters. And, actually, I can read you the potential enemy types. Any natural aquatic creatures, low-level aquatic humanoids. Now, when I'm talking low-level aquatic humanoids, I'm talking things like Lokatha or Bullywugs. But Bullywugs wouldn't really make sense in saltwater. But Lokatha, Quotoa, what are they called? Oh, God, evil mermaids. Marrows. That kind of stuff. But I think Marrows are pretty high level. I'm not terribly sure about those. But that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Low-level. Low-level aquatic humanoids. Then, as I said, it's going to be a lot of pirates and stuff like that, so I've got low-level humanoids written here. And I also wrote low-level avians, because, there's really no reason there shouldn't be some sort of avians flying around this cove, as it is a naturally occurring cove. But, the reason I've got so many dungeons is each and every single one of these dungeons, they actually have access to another dungeon or another 2 dungeons under the mountain, which is where the campaign is really supposed to be taking part. It's not supposed to be an above-ground campaign, which I've got stuff written just in case it does end up that way, but the main focus of it is to be under the mountain. And I'm not going to do, simple Underdark stuff or, what's it called from Skyrim? Blackwatch? Oh, God, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the giant underground, world in Skyrim that's supposed to, expand past, all of Cyrodiil. So that's supposed to be something like that. It's supposed to be a large series of dungeons with a couple of, really large caverns under it that is supposed to be the focus of the campaign. Now, with that being said, I do still want them to come up to the surface, but I kind of want them to have their bases near the surface. Or, on the surface, but near whatever entrance they're in. Because it's going to get a lot more complicated the deeper and deeper they get to the, under the mountain, for them to get back up to the surface. And as I said, I've got stuff written for the surface, too. It's just, right now, the main focus is this major city, which is, Dom Rye. But I think I would rather start with Stone Blister Cove, Just because Sewers of Domrai, I'm going to have to do a lot more kind of looking into vermin and things like that and what could actually be down there. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can just throw vagrants in every room, but I want it to not just be completely full of, you know, people who are down on their luck. So, Stone Blister Cove is going to give me a lot more options. Now, Stone Blister Cove has 10 sublocations just like the sewers do. However, unlike the sewers, each of the locations are actually, like, figured out. Now, Red Coral Reef is what I am calling the water below the large islands, which are connected by bridges. I'm considering it one area, but it is a huge area, as it pretty much covers all of the water. Then I've got Tolent Island, which is one of the, I believe, 1, 2, 5, one of the 5 islands that I have built for this bay. This one has 6 rooms. Now, 6 rooms I'm kind of breaking down to, like, 6 different... It could be one shelter that has 2 rooms, one shelter that has 1 room, that kind of thing. And I think I'm going to do 2 shelters with 2 rooms and 2 shelters with 1 room, which are going to be on Tolent Isle. Then I've got Roldor's Pillar. Now, Roldor's Pillar is literally just like a giant chunk of basalt that is sticking out of the water. It's big enough that stuff can be built on it, but I've got it more or less built to kind of be like a tower. So you can climb up on top of the pillar, but it's like a watchtower on top of it. That's going to have 3 rooms built on it. And pretty much the way you're going to walk around that pillar is via these rope bridges that the pirates have built there. Then I've got the Horns of Melf. Not the Horns of Milf, you horny bastards. The Horns of Melf, which is 6 rooms. Now, the Horns of Melf are 3 very small islands, which are kind of close to the entrance of the Under Mountain area. Then I've got an underwater tunnel. I'm not going to explain how people get to said underwater tunnel, but it is big. It's 3 rooms, and by 3 rooms, I mean 3 massive caves. With 1 including the tunnel itself, so it's really only 2 really big caves, but it's underwater. And I've got the Damp Cavern, which once again, get your minds out of the gutter, you fucking pervs. It is 1 area, but it's a large area. Then I've got the Wreckage of the Red Queen, which only 4 rooms are still accessible by the Wreckage of the Red Queen. Then I've got the Wreckage of Lent's Rabbit, which is 2 rooms, which is kind of like a little skiff, or, you know, it's a small boat that was wrecked, but it was a merchant vessel. And then I've got the Wreckage of the Suman Pride, which is the largest wreckage in the bay, and it is 5 rooms that are still accessible. Then I've got the Approach. The Approach is actually where the players are going to fight Hitodenchak, because he's going to be up on the ridge that they need to go under to get into the Approach. Now, the Approach is what I'm calling the entrance to the Underdark for this location. And pretty much, it's got 2 areas, but it's really only got 1 real area, because that's where they're going to fight Hitodenchak. And it can be accessed by crossing the wreckages. But the wreckages, that's where the main boss fight is going to be. Because that's where the Beast of the Bay is going to attack people. So they're going to have to, like, jump between these boats in order to fight the Beast of the Bay, which is very interesting. But we're going to start with Red Coral Reef, which is the major water area, like, body of water that we have. Now, I kind of have an idea what I want to do with this already. I just need to go through and look at some stats real quick. Because I found Well, I was reading through some of these old books, and I do read through these books pretty frequently. I noticed Quotoa and Sahuagin are very kind of chill creatures. Or one of them is really chill and one's not. I think Quotoa are chill and Sahuagin are evil. Just let me look it up real quick. 157. Oh yeah, and then of course Sahuagin have an ability to mutate, which is really interesting to deal with. Oh. So Sahuagin are... One Sahuagin is considered a challenge rating 2. Interesting. And I think they are considered evil as they, I believe, worship Dagon. I'm not terribly sure about that. They also do have a blood frenzy, which is very similar to the barbarian's ability to go crazy. And they can speak to sharks. Which is probably why they're such a high rating, despite their very tiny health. So yeah, Sahuagin are considered evil, but they're lawful evil. Now, I'm thinking of having like a little mini conflict going on in this bay between the Sahuagin, the Quotoa, and the pirates that live up on the islands, which I think could make for an interesting dynamic in the area and really kind of bring this smaller dungeon to life. Where's the K's? Elemental P. I'll just look up a page in the glossary. There we go, 125. Alright, Quotoa. They are considered, in terms of challenge rating, they've got the exact same health as Sahuagin. But they are neutral evil. Okay, they are also evil. What was I thinking was good? I thought there was a good race. But they are considered sinister and diabolical. They're also considered challenge rating 2, though. But they also have the ability to call lightning, which makes them very interesting to deal with. And somewhat difficult to deal with, too. And what was I thinking of? Lokatha. Was that what I was thinking of? Because one of these are just considered truly neutral. Yes, it was. It was Lokatha, which are considered just plain neutral. So we've got Quotoa, we've got Sahuagin, and we've got Lokatha, which are all going to be pretty much hanging out in the same bay area. And I want to kind of build a dynamic here where there might be like a little mini turf war going on, which the players will need to be involved in. They are a low challenge rating too. There's only... They have under 10 health per, and they're only half of a challenge rating each. They've got spears, generally crossbows as well. And of course, you can kind of up them or mess around with them all they want. And they are also warm aquatic. Companies of 2 to 4 / patrols of 11 to 20 are not that bad. But they do, I believe, come with sergeants at certain points. So yeah, Lokatha's favored class is Barbarian, and most leaders are Barbarians, and spellcasters are Adepts. They worship Idro, and can follow either animal protection or water. Interesting. But they tend to have a level 3 sergeant, and it doesn't really give us much of an explanation about that. One leader of 3rd to 6th level, but I guess they did just say that a plus 2 third-level sergeants and 1 leader. So I'm wondering if their leader class is their adepts, and then their sergeants are those barbarians that they were just talking about, which could be very interesting. Because they are just a purely neutral race. And then, of course, we're going to slap the bandits in, which are going to be chaotic neutral. The Lokotha, which are going to be neutral. We're going to have the Quotoa, which will be considered, I believe, they were lawful evil, and then the Quotoa were considered neutral evil. Now, stuffing them all into one little area is going to end up causing us grief in the long term. So, I'm thinking we just use the red coral reef as maybe a random encounter location with a very specific tree. And the tree is going to be, because it's a big bay, so they could, just be territorial about where they are. That's just something to think of. Because I don't think we have enough space to put them all here. With Lokotha, are they considered... One of these races are nomadic. Yes, so Lokotha are nomadic. Interesting. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're actually going to build a random encounter table for this location. Now, I don't want to throw anything terribly big into it, as that water is going to be dangerous. But I don't want it to be so dangerous that, they fall and they just immediately die. Because that would really, really suck. Especially given how I'm trying to manipulate it so that way it's kind of balanced for everybody involved. So our first... I'm going to use a percentile table here. Let's go ahead and... let me write down what we've got as options. We've got Lokotha. We've got Quotoa. We've got Sahuagin. We're going to throw a couple of, just random water creatures in there as well, as long as they're not super powerful. So we're going to go to the animal part of this book. And I am using, as I said, 3.5 as my main focus here. Because what I could do is I could just throw a couple of different aquatic stuff in here, and then make a couple of tougher encounters where it's like 1 or 2 of something, and then also backed up by things like sharks or piranhas or things like that. The hell's a porpoise? Somebody tell me what the fuck a porpoise is? Is that a fish? It sounds like a mammal. Hold on. Okay, it's like a dolphin, it looks like. Similar to narwhals and belugas and dolphins. Okay, so they're fat dolphins. Got it. To me, I guess it makes sense they're so high rank because they can drown people. Oh, we could put octopus in there. Giant octopus would kill somebody, though. Holy shit. Fuck it. Let's toss a couple of octopi in here, man. Octopus. I'm gonna have to build a template for this, but giant jellyfish could be fun. Do I want big sharks or little sharks? Let me look at their challenge ratings. Large sharks, medium-sized sharks, huge sharks. Huge sharks are shit like megalodons. I'm gonna do shark large and shark medium. So we got octopuses, we got sharks, we've got our other races. Do you want to toss a couple of... No, the birds are going to pretty much be on land. Anything that's in the red coral reef I want to be aquatic or semi-aquatic. So I think that's a decent enough starting table for us. So let me see, because I think there's aquatic snakes, but I think those would be more in a, like, swamp. And there's squids, but they're only 1/10 of a challenge rating per. They've got 1 HP each. Giant squids. Oh no, I'm looking at toads, sorry. Squids are 1 each. Okay. Improve crowd. We'll toss squids on the list as well. Couple of different options for the living races, just to make it feel like more of an organic area. We could go ahead and we could go with orcas, but I don't think there's any billionaires which are going to be checking out this area. What's a chachalot? The hell is a chachalot whale? Oh, it's the sperm whale. Okay. He's a big boy. Okay. So that's going to be the table we're going to go off of. Now, I'm going to actually write this down on here. Let's take a picture of it once the stream is done. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 options. So we'll do a 1 to 10 chart, or we'll do a 1 to 100 chart with the every 10 being a different outcome, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So we will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. It's a perfect size chart. Write that down right there. Erase that. Erase that. Very cool. Very nice. Fix that. So the first one is going to be 1 or 0 to 10. Now, 0 to 10, I want the lower the roll is, the harder the challenge is. So 0 to 10 is going to be, was it Sahuagin that can speak to sharks? Or was it Quotoa that can speak to sharks? It's Sahuagin. And they start at level 2 per. And you can use them as a character too. Okay, so this is what I'm thinking. I think the Sahuagin are going to be... Let me look at Quotoa. I need to see what they're actually like. If that makes sense. I saw kobolds. They're right by kobolds. Alright. Quotoa are... They're neutral evil, but not pure evil. Tell me about their system. They're an ancient line of aquatic humanoids known for their sinister nature and diabolical tendencies. Although most people shun contact with them, sometimes avoiding them is simply not possible. They know much about long-forgotten ancient evils dwelling in the deepest parts of the ocean. I was wrong. The Quotoa are the ones who follow the great old ones. Being pudgy or bloated. Generally silver gray. Pigmentation changes with their mood. Okay. But it doesn't say that they're terribly territorial, but it would make sense if multiple races are in the same place, that they would be kind of territorial. So this is what I'm going to do. We're going to have the Quotoans and we're going to have the Sahuagin both here as major opponents. They're going to be in a territory fight, and the Lakatha are the ones who are going to be caught in the middle because they are a nomadic tribe. Okay, so 0 to 10 is going to be a Sahuagin plus... I don't want to throw too many at these guys. Too much. Or too hard of a challenge. It's going to be one Sahuagin and a big-ass shark. Now, a large shark is also level 2. In a party of level 1s, a sea challenge rating 4 encounter should be okay, but I'm going to have it one Sahuagin, 2 medium-sized sharks, or 2 large sharks. I'll make it a challenge rating 6. So how much health do they have? Oh, they have a lot of health. I would feel bad throwing them at that. Let's do... Yeah, we'll keep a challenge rating 4. One Sahuagin and one large shark. So 11 to 20 is going to be one Sahuagin and 2 medium sharks. Or no, 1 medium shark. 1 medium shark. Be slightly bigger than a man. So 21 to 30 is going to be let's do, you want to throw Quotella in here now? We'll do 2 medium sharks for the one Sahuagin. We'll do 2 Quotella. So 31 to 40 will be what do I want that to be? So got an option of Lakatha, octopus. We'll do a large shark by itself. $41 to $50 will be, I believe they are challenge rating 1. Let me check real quick. Yeah, we'll do 3 medium sharks. They'll hunt as a pack. $51 to $60 is going to be where we throw in the Quotella. As I said, I think they're only half a challenge rating each. And I think they move in... I believe they move in packs in order to stay alive. Goblins. Hydras. Amir. There it is, look at them. They are found in company. Perfect! I think that's perfect. It's going to be 1d6 Lokatha. 1/6 plus 1 Lokatha. So that could either be a very easy encounter or a very difficult encounter. But they are neutral, so they can be bargained with. Next is going to be my jellyfish. That's going to be 1d4 plus 1 giant jellyfish. Because once I build the template, they're probably going to be around a challenge rating of 1.5. Or a challenge rating of 1. Nothing too bad. Then we're gonna do octopi. 71 to 80. That will be squids. How many octopi? We'll do 2 octopi. 2 octopus. 81 to 90 will be squids. Squids. 1d4 squids. And then 91 to 100 will be 1 giant crab. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, wait, you didn't even bring up a crab. You're right, I didn't bring up a crab. Because crabs are actually really fucking strong. However, because I'm using 3.5, I have the Equipment and Armory book, I believe it's called. But pretty much what that does is it gives the players more access to different materials that they can build with. And crabs are hard to kill, but if they kill them, they can harvest its chitin and actually make a pretty decent set of armor out of it, which is going to be very interesting. So, next I am going to... I'll just write down in my notes what it is. This is going to be the coral reef random encounter. That's going to be every time they hit that water, they're going to have to roll on that. This will be the coral reef random encounter. Oops. There we go. I'll switch to the next page. So that one will dedicate itself in-game. I've got the stat lines for that. Next, we're going to go to Tolemt Isle. Now, Tolemt Isle here is actually going to be a, where some of the pirates are. This is going to be the island that connects to kind of the path next to the mountain. Pretty much what that's going to do is this is going to be the first encounter with the pirates in the area. So I already know what I'm going to do there for the most part, but there are 6 rooms that need to be done, and as I said, I think I chose to do 2 2-rooms and 2 1-rooms for shelters there. And this is going to be one of the, I think Tlempt is the biggest isle of the bunch. So here we're going to have just pirates. We're going to have, in one of the 2 rooms, for the 2 rooms we're going to have a couple of things in them. Let's do, each of the 1 rooms can have 2 medium-sized creatures. So we're going to have 1 pirate with 2 dogs. We're going to have 2 pirates in another one. Although they're not really pirates because they're not in the seas. In one of the big 2-room shelters, I think we'll have 3 pirates and 1 pirate brute. And what the pirate brute is just going to do is he's going to be essentially like, kind of like a barbarian, but without all the cool stuff that barbarians have. So he'll be, you know, tougher, he'll have some sort of berserk ability, and he'll be better with 2-handed weapons. In the other one, though, we're going to have 1 pirate, what are they called? 1 pirate, what do I want to call them? I want to call them buccaneers, no. 1 pirate. I don't know what to call it. A pirate. It's pretty much going to be a pirate that has a flintlock pistol. Which, yes, I am permitting black powder in the game, but it's going to be hard to come by and even harder to make. And it's not going to be really any stronger than bows and arrows and things like that. I think it's going to be wildly inaccurate, but still cool. We'll call him a black powder pirate. Black powder pirate. Pirate. This one's also going to have 1 pirate brute. Brute. 2 normal pirates. And it's going to have a guard dog. Now, I think I am going to actually add a second mini-boss to this area, which is going to be on top of Roldor's Pillar. Just because every pirate gang needs a boss. That'll generally be the encounters for Tlempt. Should be enough combat for my players. And it would make sense that they would need a decent amount of numbers to deal with the constant besiegement of, you know, Kotoa and Sahuagin and things like that. So, I think that's enough numbers for that. Next, we're going to go to Roldor's Pillar. Now, Roldor's Pillar is, as I said, the big old thing of basalt. And what that pretty much is going to do for us is, this is going to be where the pirate boss is going to be located. He's going to be staying on this pillar because it's going to be central to all of the islands. Now, this is going to be a 3, level tower. But I'm thinking Of course, we're going to have the boss. So let's think of a good pirate name that isn't, like, too, like, out there. I'm thinking... how about... let's call him Rykard Scissortooth. Rykard Scissortooth. Now this is also where the treasure of this group is going to be stored. I also want to... Rykard would not be in by himself, so I'm going to give 2 pirate brutes, which will be his bodyguards. And we're going to give him a second hand, or a first mate. And his name is going to be First Mate. Now, this will actually be a pretty tough encounter for them to go and actually do. But if they manage to accomplish it, it'll actually be a pretty decent payoff. Let's name him... Old Stink Eye. Perfect. So, pretty much in Roll Doors, we're going to have... we're going to throw a couple of... what would we have in the bottom? Because the bottom is going to be where the lackeys are. Second floor is where him and the first mate is going to be, and then the third floor is going to be where the treasure is. So I'm trying to think, what would pirates tame? If they would tame anything. And I'm thinking... we'll throw a trap chest down there. Chest. We'll put that on the first floor. We'll do 2 guard dogs. Good. Would they have guard dogs, though? They are pirates. I guess there isn't really, like, a piratey creature they would tame. Oh, I think the dogs will do. So that's going to be Roll Doors. I'll get more into the specifics on old Rykard Scissortooth and old Stink Eye later on. Now, the Horns of Melf are going to be a series of interconnected, like, horns. I don't remember if they are 4... I think I made it 4 islands, but 6 rooms in total. So there's going to be 2 bigger horns and 2 smaller horns. They're kind of going to be built like a treehouse around the stone using the wreckage. And then the Horns of Melf is what's going to connect to the wreckages, which will then connect to the approach. So, the Melf, we're going to have let's make it 8 rooms, actually. And we can do 4 horns with 2 double-stacked buildings on it. So 1 2-story per. So the first one is going to be... this is where they're going to keep their smith. No. This will be... oh, maybe some big-ass birds or something? No, I'm going to keep it humanoid for the most part. make the first one a storage unit. I'm thinking. There doesn't need to be fight every single location. As much as I love combat, don't need that much combat. So we'll do locked door with a trap on it. It'll be a, because I want it so that way if they kick down the door, it'll trigger a trap. So it's got to be attached to the door handle. Could go with a swinging log trap. That could be fun. Oh, a harpoon trap. That could be fun. That's going to be for the first one. Second island is going to be kind of like where some of the dumbasses hang out. We're going to put like 6 pirates in there. That's going to be a bigger fight. We'll have 2 brutes. We'll have 2 black powder. Nice. The third one is going to be residential, so I don't really want to put too much in there. I mean, there's a couple of rats, but I don't think they need to fight those. Third one's not going to have anything in it. And then the final one is going to be what are we gonna name him? We're gonna have this guy by himself. He's gonna be the guy who creates the black powder weapon. So he's gonna be an alchemist of some sort. We'll just name him, for the time being, as a placeholder, he'll be Johnny Powder Keg. I'll give him a better name later on. But he'll be the alchemist and one who creates the black powder weaponry. And he'll be the machinist. So then we're going to go down to the underwater... No, we'll do the wreckage of the Red Queen next. Alright, the Red Queen is going to be... That will be the pirate vessel that crashed here. Since we're getting closer down to the water, we'll throw some Lokotha here. 6 Lokotha. As I said, they don't need to fight them. Actually, no, because this is where they're going to do their fishing from in order to stay alive. So we'll do some birds. What kind of birds, though? We'll do... Do I even have an option for birds? I don't even think I have an option for birds. Yeah, I don't. Let me trick Marrow, actually. That could be funny. Oh, Marrow are considered aquatic ogres. Not what I thought they were. Okay. That's dumb. Not seeing anything that I could really throw in here. So why throw anything? Actually, I know why I throw anything. Yeah, we're gonna throw a couple of the Lakatha down there. We'll do 6 Lakatha. And for 2 pirates. And 2 pirate harpooneers. Now the harpooners are going to be a little bit different. They're essentially going to use their harpoons like javelins. But they're going to pretty much use the javelin, template for their damage and things like that. So we've got the harpooners, and we got 6 Lakatha. That should be fine. Unless I throw Quotoa there. Let's do 2 Quotoa instead. They're neutral evil, which they would get along with pirates. Pretty well, I'd imagine. Yeah, that works. Then we've got the Wreckage of the Wentz Rabbit. Now this one's a tiny little thing. And this is where I'm going to have the boss fight. This is where the Beast of the Bay will attack. The Bay. That fight is going to continue over on the Wreckage of the Suman Pride. Suman Pride. Except on the Suman Pride, they're also going to have to deal with, I don't know, maybe some Sahuagin. Yeah, we'll do some Sahuagin. Which now brings us to which will take us to our underwater tunnels. Now, the big underwater tunnel, this is where the Sahuagin, this is where they live. This is their whole no. This is where the Quotoa will live. This is the Quotoa hub. And it's got 3 big old caverns in it. Well, only really 2. And I'm just going to circle Quotoa. Because that'll have things like the, it's not going to be like a full civilization down there of Quotoa. It's kind of going to be like a weird little culty thing, since we know they like to praise the old gods. And then the Damp Cavern, that's going to be the Sahuagin main area. But pretty much in these locations, this is where we're going to see the kind of more experienced versions of these creatures. Like the Quotoa have their shamans, and the Sahuagin have their barbarians and things like that. So in these caverns and tunnels, we're going to see, of course, a whole bunch of Quotoa, and the Sahuagin are going to have their barbarian leaders, and it's just going to be mixed in with the rest of them. Now, they should not actually be able to get to the tunnel or the Damp Cavern at this time. The whole point of this is once they clear this out, you know, they unlock the approach which will lead them into the underground of the mountain. This is pretty much going to allow them to build a town, or at least take over like the pirates stuff that they built, and kind of build like a miniature town / base right outside the cave, which means eventually they will have to deal with Hitoden Jack, and it means I can tie in the big Quotoa and Sahuagin population fighting around them as a major part of the just as another arc later on. But I think that is the encounters done for this particular dungeon. I'm pretty happy with it. For the most part, I'll write the specifics of what each of these pirates and these little mini-bosses are actually equipped with and what they're actually, going to do. Because I want the harpooners to be there because they're the fishermen, they gather the food. The brutes are there as just, brutes. Then Rykard is the leader of the pirates. Stink Eye is his first mate. Pirates, of course, have their dogs, things like that. The Black Powder Pirates are the ones who, have access to low-level guns, which I'm really actually excited to kind of implement. And then we've got the boss fight, which is the Beast of the Bay. We've got Hitoden Jack as well, which that's going to be a problem they will have to deal with. Even if they don't do it immediately or they circumnavigate it the first time, it's a problem they'll have to deal with eventually. But once this is all done, and hopefully they'll realize, oh, hey, we can build a base here. And we'll be able to go into the dungeon pretty safely. That's what I'm hoping for. I don't know if that's what I'm going to see, though. I don't have a lot of faith in them putting 2 and 2 together. They're probably going to go into the approach and they're going to try to stay underground and they're going to run out of food and all sorts of other stuff. But if they can turn it Stone Blister Cove into kind of a checkpoint or an entryway into the dungeon, because I guess now I can talk about for the last 10 minutes what the dungeon actually is. So, pretty much this mountain has a whole bunch of dungeons that are under it, all different types of sorts. Either it's an old crazy alchemist or something, or it's something like a, friggin' Quotoa Cave, or Colt, as I said about the Colt thing earlier. But pretty much, there's one major entrance called the Maw of Malstrax, which is the main cave that most adventurers go through. The problem is that historically in this world, the Maw of Malstrax has already been thoroughly cleared by adventurers who came before. So, even though you can go through the Maw of Malstrax, it's actually really dangerous when you reach the other side because the dungeons are way stronger than starting adventurers. So a lot of starting adventurers will die going into the Maw of Malstrax. Then there's different other entrances all over the place, which I want the players to go through because it'll give them that steady increase to where they are, to where they can deal with the later on dungeons, which are super deep. And the Maw of Malstrax is called the Maw of Malstrax because it was once the entrance to the Den of the Dragon Malstrax, which was a ancient red dragon that used to terrorize the mountain area until it got hunted down. And it's called the Maw of Malstrax because the cave entrance is still in the shape of a dragon's maw. So they say that in the lore that Malstrax's spirit or a soul decided to possess the mountain and to destroy Malstrax's heart, which is the evil that lurks in the mountain. They have to go through the mouth and fight through the tunnels, which are supposed to be the veins and all the internals and things like that. And that's kind of going to be the basis of it. Obviously, Malstrax probably didn't actually possess the mountain, but I want it to kind of have that progression level. So that's kind of where that all comes into shape. And for example, if they get through this entrance and they lock it up, maybe not lock it up, but they claim it, they can build a little town around it. They can start getting their own little blacksmiths and guards and bands, party bands and things like that. And then they can utilize this tunnel to get to dungeons that haven't already been cleared out by other members of the Adventurers Guild or whatever it is. So they'll have that steady increase, they'll have access to more treasure and things like that, and they'll have a much higher survivor rate than if they just walked straight into the Maw of Malstrax, went through the already cleared tunnel down to the level friggin' 8 to 12 area that I've got it set up as. So that's kind of where the different entrances come in to shape. For example, another one was in the Ghost Village of Remus. That entrance, which obviously they could have taken over the Ghost Village and rebuilt it and used it as their main hub, but the entrance was actually in the bottom of the Well of Remus, which leads them underground, under the mountains, to one of, I think I had that cave tunnel system hooked up to 3 different potential dungeons that they could go down, just because I was expecting Remus to become more of a viable spot for different adventurers to work out of. And then another one was the Church of the Burnt Mother, that cult I was talking about earlier that I wrote up. They have an entrance into under the mountain and the bottom of their cathedral through the, I think it's called the Sanctuary of the Saints, I wrote it, which is where supposedly the body of the Burnt Mother was, found. Or not found, but that's where she was kind of laid to rest after she passed away. But there's an entrance in that sanctuary somewhere that leads them under the mountains. Now, with that all being said, I haven't had a single one of my parties actually get under the mountain yet. That's what these introduction dungeons are. This is literally, I have them written down in my notes as entry dungeons. But there's a whole bunch of them that I want to end up doing. So, now we've got the encounters written down for Stone Blister Cove for the most part. I'll write up the stat lines and the challenge ratings and things like that later on, because it is 6 o'clock and I actually need to go ahead and record like a whole bunch of episodes for the YouTube channel, which is doing fantastic, by the way. I think I started uploading literally 4 days ago, and we've doubled our friggin' subscriber count, and friggin' blew our view count out of the water, dude. Like, literally, when I look at my analytics for the YouTube channel, it says plus 999% from the last 28 days. So the YouTube channel is going good. As long as it keeps going good, I will make sure that I keep making content for it. I'm going to make a big old goal for it, and I'll probably upload that video tomorrow. But I do have a goal in mind that I want to reach in a certain amount of time. And I mean, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to reach it, especially as the more content comes out more steadily, the higher our subscribers get, I was always told when I've talked to other YouTubers and streamers, and I've watched them and watch people say, and they always say the first 100 subscribers are the hardest climb you're ever going to have to do, followed by the climb to 1,000. Once you hit 1,000, apparently things really start rolling and rolling, as long as you actually genuinely get them. A lot of streamers and a lot of YouTube people, they do this stupid follow for follow thing, which I absolutely refuse to do. No hate to the people who do it, but I like my community to be built by my community. And the follow for follow thing is good to hit certain goals, but they don't add any real value to the channel because there are other streamers and, content creators who are focusing on their own stuff rather than people who just want to view and enjoy your content. So I think my first 13 followers or something like that on Twitch were done. Actually, I don't even think it was that many. I think I got maybe 8 followers that were follow for follower. Because my early followers, they were all, friends and friends of friends and things like that. But, I intend to, I forgot where I was going with this. Yeah, even though the building of the community is very slow, it is steadily progressing. As I said, we've doubled our subscriber count in Actually, I think we've more than doubled it. I think I started with 5 last week, and I'm sitting at 12 right now. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But we've more than doubled our subscriber count, which is fucking awesome. And I hope to keep seeing that trend going on. And then even here on Twitch, we're actually super, super duper close to affiliate. I just wanted to throw out this little stream just as an extra little day stream. Give you guys an idea of what my D&D building process is, and just kind of let you guys get an idea of what it's actually going to be like when it happens. Because as I said, I do intend to actually record some of the D&D campaign and put it up on YouTube. Probably not on Twitch, because I don't think it would get a lot of views on Twitch, but I can see it getting some views and stuff on YouTube. At least not yet. I'm certainly nowhere close to Critical Role or anything like that. I'm not going to pretend that I am. But pretty much that's what the goal is going to be. I like doing the live stuff and the TTRPG stuff very much. And it's just content I want to make. Even if it isn't the most popular content, I'm going to do it anyway. This whole stream was pretty much here just so you guys could hear what I'm doing, see what I'm doing, get an idea of my creative methods, and just kind of let you guys know that this is a thing that will be coming eventually. I don't know when that eventually is. I need to get more camera work set up, and it's a whole long process to get what I need set up to do it, but it's something I'm definitely going to be doing at some point. For the time being, I'm going to mostly stick to the gaming content. I might do some VOD stuff, but that's pretty much going to be my content for a little bit. But either way, I will see you guys next time. Bye.